Welcome to our community church, Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Amy Holtkamp, and it is a joy to be with you today, both in person and virtually. So who are we as community church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Kathy Larimer, our board president, who has a few announcements for us.
Good morning. I'd like to remind you that we are closing in on the end of our search, our ministerial survey, search survey. Okay, so a week from Monday, we would like to have all the responses. You should have received that in the Community Matters newsletter that comes out on Thursday. But if anyone needs a link or a hard copy, please let me know and I can get that to you. Also, we are carefully monitoring the number of cases of COVID in the area with this new Delta variant. So please pay attention because it may be that we have to go back to virtual services. So just want to let you know that. And thirdly, there's a group called Together New Orleans, which is part of a larger group called Together Louisiana that is gathering congregations together to campaign for, certain issues like for bills or against bills in the House and the Senate. And Tuesday night at Dillard at 6:30 at the chapel, there is a meeting and all are welcome to attend that. And if you need any more information, I'll be happy to give you that also. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy, and please look to the weekly email for further announcements. All right, so today we are delighted to welcome Reverend Justin McCreary to our pulpit. Justin officially became a UU in 2010 and began serving the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Jackson in 2013. Justin received preliminary fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association in 2019 and was ordained by the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jackson on November 3rd, 2019. During his tenure at UUCJ, Justin has had the opportunity to serve not just the church, but the greater Jackson area in regular social action, along with the Mississippi Immigrants Rights Alliance, Mississippi Religious Leadership Conference, NAACP, and other grassroots organizations. In 2015, Justin had the opportunity to perform one of the first legal gay marriages in the state of Mississippi. In the years to follow, he would participate in many protests and actions with the Poor People's Campaign and Black Lives Matter of Mississippi. When Justin isn't in a church or in a protest, you may find him working on one of his many hobbies, including hiking, baking, cycling, ham radio, and computers. And now let us begin our worship in earnest with our chalice lighting. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. If you feel like it, please join us in singing the words that are in the chat box if you're at home or that you remember from worship. And the fire of hope and commitment. Sorry, that beginning's a little high for me. I'm more of an alto, so, but thanks for carrying me along. All right, so at this time, I'd like to call up our wonderful RE director, Cynthia Ramirez, for our Time for All Ages.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the day where we're going to 2, 3, and I'll have a piece of tape.
Says here, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation.
So, which do you think is number 1? And there will be prizes. Okay. There will be the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Which one do you think it is? I'll say 7. 7? And this is the whole exercise, isn't it, people? Okay. Go with it.
Respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. I'm guessing number 6. Maybe 7. I say
6?
7.
So who has the red one? Okay, so you said number 6, you said?
I said number 7.
Yeah, he thinks it's number 7, is that
Yeah,
okay?
you can tell me yours.
Yeah. Now I'm with him.
A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I think that is 5, but I'm not sure.
I'm getting nice. Number 5. Okay, what you got?
The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. So it's 2 or 3. I'm going to say 2. We should be using a microphone. I can't hear
So we don't have a microphone, we have to project. Oh, I didn't know you can use that.
I found the microphone.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited now. Come on down.
Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I have no idea, so I will guess 3.
Okay, you're 3.
The inherent worth and dignity of every person, which I thought that was the first one, but
And the lady says number 1.
Here, we get that one right.
Is this your last answer? Is this your last? Anyone? Anyone? Is this thing working? All right, we ready for the unveiling?
Yes.
And the first one is inherent worth and dignity of every person. We have a winner. Who did that? Woo-hoo-hoo. Chalice sticker, yay! Okay. So, number 2. Justice, equity, and the compassion in human relations. Okay. So we'll move this. So this is number 3, 2. All right. Number 3 is acceptance of one another and encouragement to the spiritual growth of our congregations. Okay. And number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Almost, Alan. Was that you, Alan? Yeah. Close, but no sticker. Okay. Number 5, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregation and the society at large. That's what I have right here. All right. Cool. Yeah. Okay, number 6. Boom, let's see who got it. Let's see. Oh, somebody got it right. Okay, let's see. Respect for the inherent, interdependent web of all existence and of which we are a part. We have a winner. Woohoo! Becky. Congratulations. Okay. All right, so the last one is, okay, so this was, number 6 was the goal of world community with peace and liberty and justice for all. Congratulations. Okay, as your Director of Religious Education, I think we need an adult learning session on the 7 principles. I'm just saying. Maybe I'll get the children to lead it. Thank you very much.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfections fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful, still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel the love glow like a sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
Yes, thanks so much to our musical guest, Aaron Ryan, for being here today. So Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members' and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659. So if you're looking for a chance to slyly look at the time on your cell phone, now's the time you could do that by actually getting it out to text a donation to the church. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur de Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70124. And you can give in person. So please come forward during our musical offertory. If you're unable to come forward, just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Thank you so much. Now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you're online, please write your joys and sorrows in the chat box to be read aloud. If you're in person, there are cards of joys and sorrows in the foyer. If you were not able to fill one out earlier, please feel free to do so during our musical interlude. And also, I think Kat back there has some cards. If you need one, just raise your hand. Thank you.
Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunderclouds will appear. Wait and see what a world we can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me.
All right, we have a joy from Carol. Chuck and I had a truly joyous reunion with daughter Jenny and her partner David last week after 18 long months. Oh, that's wonderful. And a joy from Kat. Happy to be here. I always look forward to seeing you all. And a joy from Cynthia. Glad to see civilian space travel. Woohoo! And a sorrow. My mother will be undergoing an eye operation on July 22nd for cancer. Well, we're so sorry to hear that and wish her all the best, Cynthia. And we will light 2 more candles. One for the joys still bubbling up that are too new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put words to. Know that we love you and that we hold you in our hearts. Oh, we have one late arrival. All right. Oh, and a sorrow from Linda. Our daughter has COVID. We wish her all of the best and hope for a speedy recovery. All right. Well, at this time, I'm going to invite Reverend Justin up to the pulpit. Thank you.
Hi. How are y'all this morning? It's good to hear. I say that it's been a long time since I've traveled to preach or been in a pulpit and looked at this many people. I really appreciate being here today. My reading before the sermon is by Richard S. Gilbert. It's To Savor the World or to Save It. And it says, I rise in the morning torn between the desire to save the world or to savor it, to serve life or to enjoy it, to savor the sweet taste of my own joy, or to share the bitter cup of my neighbor, to celebrate life with exuberant step, or to struggle for life of the heavy laden? What am I to do when the guilt of my bounty clouds the sky of my vision? When the glow which lights my every day illuminates the hurting world around me, to savor the world or to save it? God of justice, if such there be, take from me the burdens of my question. Let me praise my plenitude without limits. Let me cast from the eyes of all my troubled folk. Now the cries of the hurt and the hungry, you will not close my eyes to the sight of the afflicted. What is that you say? To save one must serve. To savor one must save. The one will not stand without the other. Forgive me in my preoccupation with myself. In my concern for my own life I had forgotten. Forgive me, God of justice, forgive me and make me whole. My first computer was a Commodore 128 with a 1571 5.25 5¼ floppy drive. If I wanted to play a game or to run a program, I would turn on my Commodore, then turn on the disk drive, put the disk in the drive, and type the following text. Load quotation mark, asterisk quotation mark, comma 8, comma 1. This would cause the computer to read the code and store the program into RAM. Once the code is stored into RAM, the word ready pops up on the screen, and then I would type run. The game code loads and we wait for the screen to pop up, usually with a graphic that explains push the fire button to continue. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. If I typed load without the following, I would get a response to say push play on tape. As a kid, I never had anything to push play on, but always wondered how that worked. See, I love to look at the small manual that came with the computer that showed all the different peripherals that I could get for my Commodore. A monitor, a modem, maybe even a data set. Technically speaking, though, a data set, even then, was a step back from the floppy drive. See, a data set is basically a cassette player. I never used a data set to load a program because I had floppies, and anything on cassette would also come on the floppy. However, in the last few years, nostalgia has taken hold. And I began to consider these old computers again because I currently have a Commodore 64 at my house, a floppy drive, and I found a new old stock data set. And I always wanted to see how it works. I found a cassette tape with a word processor on it, and I was off to the races. So, by the way, for anyone uninitiated, a cassette tape is a small plastic shell filled with a ribbon that usually uses iron oxide or chromium oxide pressed between filaments to store information. The ribbon then would be pulled over a magnet to save information or a reader to read the information. The magnet would reorient the iron oxide pressed between the filaments to store. But the most important question in all this is, why spend so much time in a sermon talking about a vintage computer and cassette tapes to people who probably never had one or don't care? The simple answer is my sermon title doesn't work without it. And I'm the one with the microphone. But it's that response that the computer gave me all those years ago from which I descend into this topic. Press play on the tape. Because of the way computers work, they need commands to follow a logical order. For example, Typing load on my keyboard tells the computer to open a specific port to listen for a specific device. If I'm using a floppy, I designate that device, I load the program, and if there is no port or device designated, it just assumes the data set. In 1982, typing load prepared the computer to start listening and run a program. Before being able to run the program must be moved from the external storage, the floppy or cassette, to the internal storage, the RAM, the random access memory. Once the program is stored in RAM, all we need to do is type run and we're off to the races. Oddly enough, people aren't much different. Like it or not, we use natural procedures to prepare for what we're doing. When I sat down to write this sermon, it was more than just opening word. I had to review documents, meditate on the topic, look at books, watch TED Talks, and for this specific sermon, I had to get a cassette tape, and then I had to pray a little. I take the information from all the different sources. Then I organize that information first in my brain, then onto Word. I basically move it from internal to external storage, and then I run my program by standing up here and presenting the information that is stored on the storage medium, or if you want to stick with my illustration, I am currently running the program now. Even things off the cuff, things that I haven't officially prepared for, being asked to speak at some event that I didn't know I was going to speak at, require some kind of preparation and access of old stored memory. If I walk my dog, or actually I would say, in fact, most things do take considerable preparation. If I walk my dog, I change my clothes because, let's face it, Justin don't like the heat. I have to harness and leash the dog. I have to get my earpiece so I can listen to music or an audiobook. And if I don't have these things, walking the dog isn't as fun. If I'm going on a day hike, I grab my day bag that has a few important items. I get my water, I change my clothes. If I'm taking the dog, I double the water, grab some snacks, and drive to the location. And when I reflect on all this, I realize that most things we do in life require us to follow some process that is predetermined based on years of doing it. Like the old adage says, how can you have your pudding if you haven't had your meat? And what blows my mind, whether it's work or play, it's really no different. I have to be prepared, even to play, which comes natural in our youth, but as an adult, not so much. Which brings me to the biggest barrier to play: culture. I'm reminded of the words of the reading by Richard Gilbert. I rise in the morning torn between the desire to save the world or to savor it, to serve life or to enjoy it, to savor the sweet taste of my own joy or to share the bitter cup with my neighbor, to celebrate life with exuberant step or to struggle for what life of heavy laden or struggle for a life of heavy laden. What am I to do when the guilt at my bounty clouds the sky of my vision? The reading gives us two options: to save the world or to savor it. It makes sense. We're either on and we're working, or we're off and we're not. Life, then, is defined by work as opposed to anything else, just like belief systems. Am I a theist or a non-theist? Either way, I'm being defined centralizing theism in God. Do I save the world or do I savor it? Am I on or am I off? Either way, we're engaging a binary. We're, in essence, flipping a switch. which is a very American thing to do. It is built into our ethos. It comes from our economic and religious history. We call it the Protestant work ethic. I found this article in The Guardian by Oliver Berkman that begins saying, "The Protestant work ethic, as every first-year sociology student knows, is what makes Western capitalism so, for want of a better word, great. When it comes to accumulating profit, what could be more perfect than hard work, self-denial, plus a threat of eternal damnation for the lazy? Then, when Europe got too comfortable, the Puritans left for America to work even harder, to self-deny even more vigorously, culminating triumphantly in the corporate culture that brought you the Furby, aerosol cheese, and Crocs." Mr. Berkman so willingly reminds us that work ethic and religious alignment go hand in hand. And this isn't the first time that association has been made. German economist Max Weber draws the connection in his 1904 book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Weber actually connects the rise of Western capitalism with the rise of Protestantism. And I could quote Weber, but he's a little out of my league, so instead I will quote someone Weber quotes. Ben Franklin from 1749. "Remember that time is money. He that can earn 10 shillings a day by his labor and goes abroad, or sits idle 1/2 of the day, though he spends but a 6pence during his diversion or idleness, ought not to reckon that the only expense he has really spent, or rather thrown away 5 shillings beside." Weber would articulate that Franklin's language is moralistic. He then traces this mindset back to the Reformation, when the church moved away from the idea that salvation came from sacrament to the idea that salvation demanded the actions of the individual. This form of Protestantism encouraged workers toward secular jobs while at the same time moralizing how they spend their money. And if I'm not careful, I could spend way too much time on this aspect. And then begin to think that I understand economics better than I really do, when the real topic of this sermon is play. When it comes down to it, theology and economics get on the same page by creating a binary of work and play. Those are the only two options. However, remember that now work is connected with faith. So moralism takes over, laziness becomes the greatest sin, self-flagellation, the path towards correction. But instead of being so blunt, we praise work ethic, making that the central theme of life. Salvation then is not from sin or from hell, but from poverty. Hard work is the key to salvation. The mansion is heaven, the gutter is hell. And at this point, if I had forgotten that the sermon was about play, I would shift from the morality of capitalism toward the discussion of anxiety and mental health in that capacity. Of course, what if all that's connected anyway? Because how can we take time to play with we're inherently filled with fear of being judged for it? Because remember Franklin's words, time is money. And if I have learned anything else, money is power. So then if I correlate, spending time in play would be ceding power. Strangely, though, what I've noticed is if you have the money, you oddly enough have the time. Which leads me to think that maybe this is just a hustle that someone's been telling me that to get me to do something I don't want to do. At this point, I could quote articles and TED Talks and psychology websites that would defend the idea that good mental health is tied to play. And if you don't want to take my word for it, Google it. In fact, I've never really lost an argument articulating that play is important to mental health. I could pull up sermon after sermon on self-care where I quote papers, articles, YouTube videos, psychologists about the subject. But I don't think I have to, because we all know this, and it's something we love to talk about. But the question is, can we find time to do it? Back in my evangelical days, when we'd talk about prayer, people would say, "But I'm too busy to pray." And we'd respond with this statement, "We're too busy not to pray." And maybe that's true, but I'd like to make a quick addendum. And I think some of you may know where I'm going with this, in that we are too busy not to play. I might even say something like, work hard and play hard, but there is a problem with that calculus, because work and play aren't 50-50. In fact, I don't know if the categories exist at all the way that we talk about them. Because what is the first thing we do when we ask someone, or when we meet someone new? We say, "What do you do?" Then they go on to explain their job or their career or their work, and then we chit-chat about it. At some point, we've defined ourselves by our job, and our success by our wealth. And if we don't have wealth, by our titles, as I stand before you today, the Reverend Justin McCreary. Because there is more than work and play. There is family, there is commitment, there is volunteering, there is parenting, and at some point you got to cut the grass too. Lives are full of softball games, choir concerts, which aren't work, but aren't necessarily play either. It's not binary. Our lives are way too complicated for that. The thing is, self-care has to be part of our lifestyle. Play is part of self-care, so play has got to be part of our lifestyle. If we are constantly saying we need to find time to play, we never will, because play takes work. Going to the beach is a long drive. It's making hotel reservations, wrangling children. That takes energy. And if we are exhausted all the time, we won't have it. The problem is, if you can't find time to get enough sleep, you'll never have enough energy to play. If you can't find time to rest, you'll never find time to play. And if you never know what you like, what you need, or even who you want to be around, you'll never make time to play, because it's easier not to. Play is part of a self-care lifestyle, not something to wedge into our current system, because let me tell you, our system doesn't care if you practice self-care. And as children of that system, can we really play without feeling like there is something we should be doing? As the words of our reading said, to save, one must serve. To savor, one must save. The one will not stand with the other. Forgive me in my preoccupation with myself. In my concern for my own life, I had forgotten. Forgive me, God of justice. Forgive me and make me whole. Because learning to savor life is justice work. Learning to practice self-care is justice work. Taking time to play is justice work, because it attacks the core of a system that says all we are is another brick in the wall. We define in our lives so narrowly work and play and talk about a balance. There is no balance. Play is as much work as work is as much play. The system tells us we are cogs in a greater machine and that we should sacrifice for that machine. Play reminds us we are human, which makes it okay to sacrifice for each other. Because time isn't money, money isn't power, and play wastes neither. Thank you. And in the words of my mother, anytime I would bother her while she was in the middle of something else, I leave you with this: go play.